Welcome to Carl DeGregorio's Desk Session 85. 85. I don't have anything specific for 85. We did 84, so we talked about the world coming to an inevitable march to authoritarianism and Orwellian dystopia. And almost as a counter effect, and I don't know if it was prevalent in the year of 1985, moving past, or if it's just the 85th desk session that I want to flip perspective, maybe just for mental health reasons. But the idea being that we have to fight the good fight often. And let's just say maybe in 85, if there were, certainly it was my youth, but if we can talk about America at the time, I suppose for some, right, there's all the revisionist stuff, but there was that optimism, that mass consumerism, cabbage patching happening. There was that feeling of consumer power, of might being right, of the three networks cranking out peak popular culture, albeit maybe leaving out sectors, things like that. So that's what I got on 85, and what I can say about turning a corner or flipping the page, at least thematically from last week, not to always have a continuum, but you have to decide, right? You have to decide how you're gonna march forward, or if you're not, a couple of lyrics flooding me, Rush, whose lyricist was Neil Peart, was if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice, right? They said, Billy Joel, they say these are not the best times, but they're the only times I've ever known, right? It's either silence or euphoria, tonight I'll be on that hill with everything I got for wanting things that can only be found in the darkness on the edge of town. There's lyrics that flood my mind when it comes to like the choice to fighting the old ennui. That's a Cole Porter lyric. To dream the impossible dream, that's Man of La Mancha. There's so many examples of, and the best I can do, the best I can summon, the best I can do in down times, and the best I can do to forge ahead is to basically find a way to summon up the courage to face the slings and arrows, and also to I think it's a Jonathan Tropper book and film, and I think the quote exists in both, but they're at a wake or the Jewish version of a shiva, I think, and some guy goes, "Kid, do yourself a favor, though. You're getting old ain't for the weak, or for the, don't get old," And I guess that is the youth being wasted, the youth being wasted on the young. I know Larry Miller, the fine comedian and actor, he has a joke that it's not the youth that's wasted on it's not the youth that's wasted on the young, it's the smoking and the drinking. And I get that too. And I don't want to get too maudlin about it. It's just, I think I've always had this mindset based on a precociousness, being a birth order situation, the age gaps and the age of my, as a late life baby, relatively, none of this is, it's not like my dad was Charlie Chaplin, you know what I mean? Tony Randall or, what have you. Al Pacino's doing it. But I've maybe just been a ponderer like a lot of us, and a lot of artists get that kind of pondering. And so while I will say there was this blissful thrust in my life of youth, I was always thinking the big thoughts, not in a I'm deep, but in a probably a neurotic setting, and maybe that was the real squandering of the youth. Well, I thought I had the time to ponder. I thought I had the time to sit and ruminate, and we didn't, and I don't, and none of us do, and it's not very productive, to say the least. But if we're gonna flip the script, because you could just even see as I set off on a ramble, I'm starting to tilt away from the windmill. I'm about facing. I'm not gonna, at very least, he may have been insane, the Don Quixote, but he was gonna fight this thing going on in his head. He was going to face the windmill, even if it was a delusion or a hallucination. And he had a stalwart friend. He had, and even his quest, right? These are notions of a different century, if you can imagine. I think probably the course has been run on Man of La Mancha in terms of high schools doing it, because the idea of unrequited, to love pure and chaste from afar, it's a crazy notion. But what Don Quixote has is the quest keeps him alive. Yeah, I may be tilting and fighting windmills, but I got a cause, dog, and that's how I guess I choke up even thinking about the Man of La Mancha and the dream, the impossible dream. It was a favorite song of my my departed ipso facto father-in-law, and was played at his memorial, and it was a big hit on the radio, but it's what it stood for, and you can't even get through the lyrics as I attempt to regurgitate them, for me, without feeling, which is, I've mentioned before, as an actor, you have to sing that 8 times a week without becoming affected. And one of the greatest joys and luxuries we have as human beings is to receive art, to be moved by art. We're not on stage, we're in the audience. And we get to weep at Romeo and Juliet's ill-fated romance. We get to laugh at stand-up comedy. We get to rejoice, at Les Mis, and also weep. And we get to, but the practitioners have to stay apart. I used to always say, Bruce doesn't know what it's like to go see Bruce, that whole ritual of driving there with your boys or whoever you get to, if you're trying to convert somebody to the church, this is going to be the best show you ever saw. And then the playing bootlegs in the parking lot and knowing what's coming and knowing all, my girlfriend said she was thrown. My girlfriend's African American, and she, knew Bruce's hits, but she never went to a concert. And she's like, it gets a little dicey in there when everybody's just like throwing fists in the air, like on cue in a call and response. And she was like, man, it was hilarious. And what joy that brings. And so that's what I want to put under my umbrella in terms of whatever I hope to achieve is, there are fans of all, and if we can drop labels and drop categories and strata, we can all love what we love and who we love from afar, from our own perch, and that's the important one. I don't know exactly what I mean by that, but I'm just saying I've spent so much time trying to figure out how to be present, I guess, joyful, to do that magic thing that the busy actor can do, which is just live their life and let the good things come. And I was struck by and here's where I'm going to do it. I'm going to shift the paradigm in my own desk session, 85, from 84 to 85. And this is what we do to ourselves. And this, once in a while, these reels, these Instagram feeds, these things will pop in. Once in a while, they will be useful and helpful. And I'm sure the percentages are low. I hope that I am in the higher percentile of sincerity and authenticity, but that remains to be seen. And all I know is that what I click with is very rarely... it's very rare, but I clicked with something and I don't remember who said it, but it was in the lines of a podcast. It was in the lines of a clip from a podcast talking about acting, and that tends to be what's in my algorithm, and puppies, dogs, acting stuff, classic rock, R&B, freestyle, and like New York pizza stuff. That's what's coming through my feed, thankfully. But he was talking about how I'm just sick of actors talk about how hard it is, and or people saying it must be hard for you guys right now as actors. And he's like, yeah, sure, but what isn't? It's hard for everything. And I really appreciated how he put it, that I'm sick of it. That we don't have to do this to ourselves. I'm not going to play into it, the demise of Hollywood. I have to flip it. Everybody's okay with AI is going to take away Hollywood. Sure, okay, you're not in Hollywood. I've seen so many comments and stuff saying, like, well, they deserve it. They suck anyway. The movies suck. Let AI come. But nobody shed a tear for, it's going to be able to, we're not going to need lawyers anymore. So all these white collar jobs are going, and everybody's sitting there going kind of like, yeah, well, I don't do that. So, well, I don't do that. So, and if it's that thing that they say it could be, which is, sort of an end of humanity or human, necessity of endeavor, that's bleak, and also nothing we should hasten and nothing we should be supportive. But the idea that I was taking it personally, but I don't drive Uber yet, and then Waymo's come. The whole point is it's not cool for any of us if that's what's going to happen. And why are we letting it? And also, and it's part of a little bit of the stratification and the siloing, that it's okay. We're not collectively worried about, it wouldn't be great if that happened, Used to be, they'd call you college boy as if you were some kind of pussy for being a college boy. And then that's a very quaint slur at this point, to call somebody a college boy, but because the population didn't go. And now it's still college boy, but now it's magnified and not monetized, but it's the same thing, which is, that book learn and stuff. And yeah, maybe some of the book learn in there is not ideal or according to certain people's ethics and politics, etc. But any endeavor, any study is worth it, and I have to remember, that if, the Mount Rushmore of actors is the only thing that's going to make me happy, that I'm going to be very upset, But here's the thing. If you know somebody who plays guitar and they're able to sit down and play guitar and blow you away with their skills and learned ability and their 10,000 hours, you don't say to him, well, you're no Eddie Van Halen. You say, you play really well. Wow, look how good you are on guitar. That must be great to be able to bliss out. The difference with acting is I may have my 10,000 hours, went where I went, showed all the promise, have agents, have auditions. I have all the things I ever asked for. I just don't have that outer, no one says you're a really good actor, even if I don't see you act, right? And so I guess that's the point that a lot of these bloggers and a lot of vloggers are saying is get out there and do it. And, forget about the quote unquote status that you're seeking, and just with that one flip, like everything's hard. It's hard to be a lawyer. It's hard to be a fucking waiter. It's hard to be a bartender. It's hard to get wherever you want to get. Life is hard, right? And so 85 and sucking it up and moving forward and using those lyrics and those motivational songs and those prayers and those books and those inspirations, and to, shut down the creeping specter of whatever it is that freaks you out, And so if it's always going to be hard, and if it's always, nothing in life worth getting is a hard endeavor. I didn't think it would be this hard, to be honest with you. But then that's just, again, I accepted too many of the inevitabilities that were tough. I don't say any of this, and again, none of it's particularly impressive, but I had friends who were in a very thick wicket, or they were in a bind, and they had an actor who was falling out of a project, but they had their dates, and I'm the call they made. It didn't work out. The guy came through. Their project went well, but I'm one of those people on their list, right? I have another short that I've already quote unquote been cast. I'm in constant contact with the director writer. It just keeps getting pushed. And it someday soon it will happen, or even if it doesn't, I have met a new collaborator, a new friend, and it all comes from someone recommending me. I have had multiple auditions. I have a situation where I have my agent and someone has moved on, and I won't get into particulars, but that's still an open door because we had a good relationship. I'm staying where I'm staying, and et cetera, et cetera. But these are all the kind of things that tell me if I, instead of being like, well, why am I not getting, I'm in a certain strata. Anyway, those are the things that if this, i.e. what this reel that sort of reconfigured it all, these are all things that I count as those little wins we celebrate. And, to know that I have been on sets, I've been on studio lots, I've booked jobs, I've been on live to tape TV, I've been on stage, I've done everything I've needed to do or wanted to do. I just want to do them continually, and I want to do them maybe on grander stages. And grander being what to me, I don't know. Or I need to really dial down what I want to say, who I want to be, bring that forth, and in a way stop being stingy, and that's another reframing, to flip the script from dystopia. That's why we talk about opportunity loss, and we talk about, you've heard these terms of when there's mass exodus in certain parts of the world, or things of the brain drain. That's like a negative way. To me, that just says we're losing our own resources. And the thing is, we're weary. We've been wearied by these things. And I think some people, even maybe in a bit of a way, it's like, if AI is coming and wiping everything out, then why bother? And that's the real danger of this stuff, So what happens if your industry will crumble because of AI? If your industry goes the way of whale oil, whale blubber, whaling, that's going to suck. There's no other way to look at it. And a lot of people just didn't think it would be theirs, but and that's commerce. Whereas art, we're in this thing, how many people, how many people go to play readings? I was a little under the weather this week, so I had to skip a few social engagements that I really wanted to go to, because I want to start getting out and back into the three-dimensional world, the analog world, or the spirit-to-spirit world, and I wanted to show out for some people, but I had, some under the weather issues, and still kind of on the tail end of that. And, so I have to sort of remember that, we are our habits, and I'm doing pretty good on changing those. And the biggest habit I need to change is up here, right? I mean, it's insipid. It's so basic that it becomes trite. You know what I mean? But and I remember I've heard things from people that I took as, I took umbrage to things that should not have pissed me off. except for the fact that I was resistant, and it was usually some kind of encouragement in what I might define as cliche, or all these judgments. I have to really put that all to bed too. I will tell you, I talk about music, and I've been adding the music element to this channel by linking some of the songs I reference off my greatest hits, my all-time playlist. I'm going down one by one. And if last week I referenced 2 songs, and so I posted 2, and this week I got to post the Lissie song I spoke about, and I'm not there yet in the episode, but there was a song. I'll tell you this: I don't know. One of my favorite genres, which is no secret. It's just between me and me. But I love. I've been turned on. I was turned on to gospel music in the 90s, and at a certain point, when you channel into R&B and the stations and the crossovers, I don't know, there's a couple R&B stations that will go all gospel on Sunday, and there were a few crossover hits, if you will, that got radio play on the R&B stations, that were Kirk Franklin being one of them, Donnie McClurkin being another one. And then whether I knew it or not, Oleta Adams was an R&B singer, and she has some gospel hits, and so and this is going back maybe even into the 80s, but I really connected to that music. I think everybody and anybody does, and so I've been just sort of wanting to be a little more connected to that, and so I've often been looking for, the Winans. Forget about it. The CC Winans. If you can get through those songs without having some emotion stirred, then I check your pulse. And so I use those songs at random sometimes. There's some country overlap with, sort of the Broken Road or Amy Grant. There's a little bit of an overlap there. And I think gospel and spiritual, one maybe Christian rock, Christian contemporary, that would probably tell you it's white music rather than black artists. And I don't play all that. I kind of put them all together. I have playlists that, maybe were... I used to run a comedy show, and I would be the DJ when my DJ couldn't be there, and I had this playlist, and I'd have Mary Mary Shackles, which was one of those big crossover hits, and nobody was listening, but it's got the beat, and you find out, and I would play it, and a buddy of mine, a black comic, would come to visit, and he'd be like, "Are you playing Shackles?" And I'm like, yeah, it's just on a playlist, and that was controversial. This is how quaint. Wouldn't it be quaint to be? This goes all the way back to Ray Charles, using gospel-inspired chords and gospel call and response. There's that scene in the movie where he starts playing "I Got a Woman" way over there, and you have to know the orthodoxy to understand. Like this was an education moment. She was mad that he was basically blaspheming because he was using a gospel cadence or a gospel call and response or gospel chords or music he learned only from church, and he threw some secular lyrics on it, and that was controversial. So, but we know that one of Whitney Houston's favorite singers, and maybe clearly bowed to her superiority, was CC Winans. She has a song called "The Goodness of God," and it's a live version, and you can't, the power of that song. But there was a song that I've heard a few times many years ago, and I couldn't find it, and I thought it was a hit. I thought maybe it is, And I'm probably more into it than some. And I would ask my black friends, my girlfriend. I'd ask people, "Do you know this song? It's Yolanda Adams." And she's got hits. And I even have an errant song looking for one of her songs on iTunes or Apple Music. I just followed and looked for the asterisk, and it wasn't the song. And all I had was the little refrain in my ear, and I didn't even know the exact words because I tried it via, words in the lyrics. Sometimes you can find a song that way. I was incorrect for years about a song that I thought was Tesla, and it winds up being a Bad Company song, and because of the ability to search lyrics, but at least I knew the lyrics. I was inaccurate with the lyrics I was searching, so I still never found this Yolanda Adams song. And again, this may be where the singularity, or I lament about AI, or I lament about the algorithm, but I was watching something, and it was an interview with Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, who already have 2 songs on my all-time list, and if I really think about it, it's their importance on my musical taste is insane, and they can produce anybody, and they have, not just Janet Jackson, not just New Edition, but they also produce gospel artists, and so this little, I don't want to call it rinky dink because I'm as rinky as dinky can get. This small podcast that was on my feed, they're so small they got Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, so I should shut the fuck up, right? But they had Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, and they're wearing their Blues Brothers fucking suits, still committed to the look, and they were talking. They were asked the real Johnny on the spot question. These guys must be so sick of getting these kind of questions, but they wanted to hear, like, the question was, what are some of your underrated songs? And Jimmy Jam is saying that he was thinking that maybe that he wouldn't call it underrated. He didn't want to kill. He couldn't pick his favorite songs, but he had an answer. They must have come up with it a bunch before. Sorry, my lights. I forgot to plug shit in. So that question, they must be, and I've learned this the hard way via auditions, and hopefully I'll get into this space where I'm gonna need the answers. But a lot of times in mostly commercial auditions, or any auditions where they want to get to know you to see how you are off the cuff, away from the script or away from what you're about to do, and a lot of times you'll get a couple questions over the bow of the camera to you, and they just want to hear your response. And so, like, if someone asked me my favorite food, I'd be like, not interesting. They don't want to watch you think. They want to watch you respond. And I would be really trying to. And the thing I learned from stand up and from being on panel shows, and it's quippiness that they're looking for, and also there's a difference between favorite. You can change your mind. So, like, the idea that I was stumped was silly, because you would just say chicken marsala, and just answer quick and answer fast, spaghetti and clam sauce. Whatever it might be, top ramen, whatever that's what they wanted. But so, like, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, more seasoned professionals, and they actually probably have been interviewed a million times. But as I'm sitting there, and I'm skipping through their YouTube onto their timestamps because I want to know what the top 4 are, and there were some album tracks that I didn't remember. A lot of them weren't singles and stuff. And, you're writing them down so you can go look them up. But the one that they mentioned was a Yolanda Adams song, Open My Heart. That's the one Terry Lewis said he really was proud of, or that would be maybe one that got away. So, boom, I'm like, that's got to be it. And I went there and I found the song and that refrain part, and I ask you for your guidance. And that was the words I was looking for. And I kept asking people, and I kept getting pissed because I was like, how do you not know this song? I get why I don't know it. and she's a huge gospel star. So, and this might not be one of her hits, but then it just felt like, I'll tell you, it just felt like a God moment. It felt like obviously a coincidence, but the idea that I had this affinity for Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis music, this affinity for Janet music over the years, Human League, New Edition, any of these incredible artists that they've, they did Saturday Love, you know what I mean? That was a song on their list that they didn't know was going to be a hit. They said there's just no way to know it. He said that they said there's 3 categories of songs. There's good songs, bad songs, and hit songs. And there's no defining a hit song, but they can be either, and they can be hits, And they didn't know Saturday Love was a hit, I guess, because you just don't know. And I guess maybe Open My Heart is already got a limited audience with gospel, but it didn't get they didn't get out of it what they wanted to for Yolanda Adams, and so now I have that song, and now it feels like it kind of came back to me. And so those are the kind of things that I'm trying to notice. They call them glimmers, right? Because when you start to cycle down and you scratch your car bumper like I did recently, and then you get online with somebody who, there's only one line at the store, and even the line is for the self-checkout, and then there's someone who's got 2 carts full of fucking shit, some poor fucking Instacart motherfuckers, in that, they're not going to open another one up. You can, that will start to build. But similarly, they say, and that's why I'm trying to turn the page. Similarly, if you start noticing synchronistic moments of where things did work out, they're both happening. It's just what you quote unquote try to notice, when you're looking to buy a car, you start to see the one you got your eye on in the wild, all that stuff. And so I have to sort of, and maybe God bless the banality of my life that this finding this song and being able to rock out and jam out and be inspired by this song. Things are going pretty good, I guess, would be the big takeaway. I don't have it so bad that I can still find inspiration in music and song and reading and writing. I have to get back into the reading. I got to find a book that inspires me. I think I have to get back to physical books, or I have to get an actual Kindle, because I'm very distracted by the other crap. And part of this death session is for however long between the shower. I sit around, as I shower, I think about what I might say. And as I get ready to upload it, and I'm basically, although I am on the digital format, this is a time that I don't, let's just say it's an hour a week that I don't, I'm not doom scrolling, And that's why, in some regards, this is a very sacred time of my week, and I'm not going to overstate that or freak myself out or freak anybody out, but that's really what it comes down to. And so I guess the takeaways for this week would be, it's a lot of waiting. It's a lot of spiraling and a lot of self-reflection, and there's probably too much time on my hands. But the notion that, there are challenges with acting. There always have been, and I think if you base it on how it was, and I think older actors like myself maybe need to understand that, yes, it's contraction. They talk about contraction, but the business was most contracted when I attempted to set out and start. So I think there are more than 3 networks, right? So if you're going to go by the status quo of when I started in available gigs, it's always been tough, and anything worth pursuing is gonna be tough, and I just have to hang in there for how long, how much longer, I don't know. And to quote Bon Jovi, it's my life, it's now or never. But I can pull the plug anytime I want. I've said that to myself over the years. This is all voluntary, and that's what also can help you as you start to feel put upon. It's like, yeah, I did this to myself, and so I guess it's kind of very foolhardy or very counterproductive to complain. But that is a love language for a lot of people, and it's a slide to the inevitable, So I guess that's what we'll talk about this week. I hope I left it on an up note, and I'm not talking about the dystopian future that may or may not arrive. Just to remember also that, we have to fight the urge to we've been dehumanizing each other for so long. And that's what art, at minimum, and I don't think we're fucking saving the world, but I have to know what I was drawn to, the art, and that's why if AI starts to do art, that's bad. And maybe it is. I know it sucks for anybody whose industry's going to be toppled, but maybe it's a little more fucking awful, I mean, maybe this discussion came around, there was controversy about there was controversy about the fucking electronic synthesizer, that was a new instrument, that the sounds it could make, that you don't get an orchestra, you got an orchestra on a keyboard with computer sounds. That, in a sense, is AI, right? That was a memory bank of sounds that could be played in key form, in pitched notes. That's what a synthesizer was, and we thought that was the fucking end of days. And then fucking Blinded Me with Science came out, and you're like, that's the fucking jam. Or anything, you got Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis with a keytar just fucking doing, I got a meeting in the ladies' room, like, fuck yeah, let's go. So hopefully there will be new masters of the craft of some things that involve AI. I think it's probably oversold and probably undersold what it will do ramification wise. But I think it's the real fear for many of us, for me, is that if we've already dehumanized ourselves by design, by some kind of manipulation, my dad used to always use this phrase, man's inhumanity to man. And I don't know when he said it, he just would lament that stuff. He would see some news item and he'd say, man's inhumanity to man. And that's kind of where the spiritual stuff has to come from, because if we keep siloing off all these downward trends of socialized, Scott Galloway, he talks about we need to get back to 20-somethings drinking more and making mistakes and dating and getting out and using the social lubricant and getting out there and having fun. And he's not wrong. And I did all that, and we're all susceptible, because it's not like I'm still spinning vinyl, so we're all using these devices. We're just using them for different demographical reasons, and so nostalgia is very powerful. But I had a lot of angst in the 80s and 90s, and so it wasn't like the digital thing took me to a darker place, you know what I mean? Maybe I've always been in a dark place for half the time, and I need to, flip that. And, so the idea that we have to be more humane, we have to try to show up when we can, when we're not ailing, and, get back to the getting. And then, that we might want to see human beings do art, because that's how we remind ourselves, That's how we remind ourselves that we're out here fucking struggling through the same shit. And that's the problem with the prevalence of superhero. No one can relate to a superhero. That's the fantastical. That's the whole point of a superhero story, is that would it were that we could be like that, and it's not what we are. We used to watch, fucking dramas acted out, and a lot of TV is very good, and so maybe that's where it's at. But we got to remember, it's this, the fact that this is a solo show is a bummer, because it's just more of a practical concern for me. I'd love to talk to people more. on the death session, and maybe I will, but we just have to find more ways to be humane, and that's a problem we can't really fix, right? People say I work in healthcare, and I'm like, okay, are you a doctor? No, but I work in healthcare. Okay, what the fuck does that mean? Because I know all I do is get 15 pieces of mail to tell me how much more I owe on top of what I pay, and then I've had people call me to say we can't give you an MRI until you get 14 different other things, and meanwhile, and then you're talking to someone on the phone that's her day job or his day job, to fucking grind you, to deny you. I mean, that ain't cool. But we've made it so hard to live. We've made a system that you have to have your chips up to be, and they can justify it because they are the one who brings cupcakes to the office, and they're the ones who, they carpool with Janine, and but then they go and they strap in the headset, and their job is to tell you will see if you get your MRI. So just keep limping around, keep missing work, keep paying your premiums, and did you send the and it's like, and you can't, and so that's a very micro, you can say war is man's inhumanity to man, and that would be, but you think how much easier it is to press a button than it is to bayonet up and strap up and fuck somebody up, and that's where we're at now with the digital thing. And so we know not what we will lose if we let it go like this. So again, I want to stay upbeat, and I'm going to get to the song this week. This is a song called, last week we did Lissie, and I'll put the video of her singing her song a cappella, not a cappella, but unaccompanied other than her guitar in that great scene from the TV show Loudermilk. That's where I became familiar with it. And there's a studio version, so maybe I'll put both up there. But this song this week is Heaven Help by Dion Estes. A very minor, I don't want to say minor figure, but a one-hit wonder, and maybe not that much of a hit, but Dion Estes was George Michael's bass player, I think, and he was prodigiously... He was a prodigy on the bass, and I guess he got a shot at being a solo artist, and he's killer on the bass. If you listen to the bass line, it's very fluid and very in the back, and the song isn't really about a bass, but the thing that really kind of it reminds me, and why I've sought it out, and it's one of my favorites, and George Michael does sing some of the background vocals on it. And it's got that late 80s, early 90s sound, but it does remind me of my dearly departed friend Jordan, who we weren't musical theater students. Not that we didn't sing. He played guitar, and the funny thing is, I guess I just didn't read the fine print. When I went to Carnegie Mellon, there was a musical theater option and just a straight acting option, and anybody who's been an actor and started early in high school, the gateway drug was always a musical, right? But for me, some of the gateway drugs were screenplays that my brother laid on me. The fact that my dad was always telling me about Marty and Playhouse 90. And so I may have had illusions or delusions of grandeur, or some kind of purity of thought about being just a straight actor. But Jordan and I would often harmonize, and that had a really cool chorus, this song Heaven Help, and it had a sync, like a rhythmic kind of hook, and we just loved this song. And there was a jukebox in one of the food courts that we had at college, and it was either that or Keep on Moving by Soul to Soul, and we would sing the harmony parts. And so anyway, Dion Estes, it's a really good song. It's got like a trumpet refrain in there, and like a acoustic kind of flamenco sound. It's definitely like, and it was all in that, before playlists, there were mixtapes and mix CDs, and there were dual cassettes that would connect and auto reverse. And I like to have the smooth grooves for the ladies, if you will. And again, this was a single, so I didn't have the money to buy a whole album of Dion Estes, but it was a hit, and I'll put that up next week. But it makes me think of my friend, and in a good way. And so we put on the song, so I'll see how many I can link in my thing. I mentioned some gospel songs, and I mentioned Lissie Poole's in Lissie. I don't know if her last name's Poole. In the show, her character's name is Poole, or the name of her band was Poole, and she was Lissie Poole. She'll be on the description this week, and then we'll see what we do next week. But Dion Estes, Heaven Help. And maybe Heaven Help Us All. And it was definitely a pop song. Here's another quick tidbit. I never knew this, but Prince was a very devout person, and he's probably the number 2 artist on my frequent flyer miles, Bruce and Prince, And someone said in a comment or somewhere along the line, but he snuck a gospel song onto the charts and nobody knew it, because I Would Die For You. Think about those lyrics and what they are. I'm not your lover. I'm not your friend. I am something that you'll never understand. You're just a sinner. I'm a dove. It's like, look at the lyrics to I Would Die For You and tell me that's not, a gospel song, and how incredible that is to be able to sneak that, quote unquote, to the masses. And as an artist with a lot of pretentiousness, I think much art can be a sacred practice, and so that's why Heaven Help Us, Dion Estes is the song this week, and maybe I'll hip you to a couple of gospel tracks in the description. And thank you for this week. I hope I shook it off. I've been playing hurt this week, but I gotta stick with the plan here. So this was Death Session 85. Carl D out. Peace.